Welcome to episode 12 of Paranormal Unwrapped with Krista Raisa and Jack Roth. Krista's a channel for the Orion Council, teacher, and creatress. Jack is an investigative journalist, author, and award-winning filmmaker. In this segment, we are discussing why, how, and when to write a story. Welcome to the broadcast, everyone. And thanks for your patience, all our international guests. Krista had a unknown sound system surveillance. No.
Yeah, we had a little glitch, but now we're good.
Totally fine. So who's here? This is today we're going to be a little more interactive with you guys because you guys love to share, and we've both been involved with scripts and storylines. Do you care to share with us how you got involved with creating storylines a little bit, because you've co-created these incredible documentaries on experiencers, and we've both written several books. And this time of year, I know we just had National Writers Month of November. It's worldwide for those of you who always wanted to get your story out there. And of course, for the creatives in the room, you might have really big visions for the new year. So yeah, how did that happen with your movie? How did you get into movie making? And were you always good at writing stories? Did you take a creative writing class?
Yeah, I did. I was always pretty good at writing, and then I got my journalism degree. So I was always kind of a writer first, well before I ever thought about making a film. But there's different kinds of writing, right? And there's different kinds of storytelling. I think when we talk about some of the documentaries and some of the books that we've done, it's nonfiction, right? So we're talking about stuff that either through experience or that we're trying to convey information to other people. So, for me, being a journalist, that's natural, comes naturally to me. I want to find out answers. I want to find the truth to things, right? So, writing the books I've written and then getting into the documentaries it was really about finding a compelling story. Storytelling, they always say like the best stories are the ones that last forever, and they're compelling, and they're always going to be compelling. It's like a Christmas Carol that always comes to mind. So we just had the holidays, right? So you think about A Christmas Carol, Charles Dickens. That is such an amazing. The essence of that story it rings true to so many people, and it's such a beautiful story that how many times has it been remade into? How many movies have been made? A Christmas Carol, right? Every year they have new movies coming out, new versions, but the reason why is because the story is so great. So you want to find that story. What is a story that you can tell that is going to get people interested, make people listen, and it's going to be compelling to people that they want to know more, they want to hear that story. So kind of that's the way we approach the documentaries, is what story do people want to hear? Like, what's really interesting to people? And usually if it's really interesting to you and you really feel you have that intuition of this is a good story, a story that needs to be told, it winds up being a really good story.
The one reason I wanted to talk about this today was because I've read a lot of channeled books by authors like Sonia Choquette. She channeled but did psychic readings and supposedly was contacted by Pleiadians at one point. And then Wendy Kennedy, who's a channeler for the Pleiadians, talks about these 9-dimensional Pleiadians. And I came across this message that said 9-dimensional Pleiadians are storytellers. I can't tell you what a 9-dimensional Pleiadian is, but in some studies of the different dimensions, like the 4th, 5th dimension, the next astral plane dimension consists of a lot of archetypal energies. And supposedly a lot of the stories we get come from the gods and goddesses that inhabit this realm, and it's part of the reason why we had the stories of the Greek gods and that kind of thing. A lot of archetypal energies, and So, mentioning that, I was sent an oracle deck. It's the ET. What's it called? Welcome to the Starseed Path. It's by Marianna in Finland. It's an extraterrestrial tarot deck. And the reason I'm showing this is, well, she has created her own tarot. And I read in David Wilcock's book that when you are writing screenwriting for Hollywood, as most of the plots in the Hollywood movies use the hero's journey format, and that the hero's journey come from the major arcana of the tarot. So those are the 22 sort of spiritual, life-changing cards, whereas the minor arcana, the larger part of the deck, are little day-to-day habits. So I always think about, okay, if I write a story, I'm gonna have to start off somewhere. Have you heard of this before?
I've heard of the archetypes, but I have never seen that. That looks really cool. I mean, those are really nice. Did she create that? Or did she create it herself? Or how did she find that? Those are really cool.
Yeah, she created these herself. There are a lot of grays and
That's really
ETs.
neat.
Yeah, and they say when you figure out your life path number, it's usually one of these. So it's up to from 0 to 21 or 1 to 22. But other than that, I was also in meditation the other week, and I was like, okay, guides, what do you need me to know? And I saw an image of a badger. And I looked up in my animal totem book, what is a badger? And a badger, Under Badger, Ted Andrews wrote, some people need a story more than they need food and water. And that just really got the wheels turning. It's like, whoa. Because, I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's part of who we are, human nature. I think even they always say, like, even cavemen, right? You go back to Neanderthals, early man, they would tell stories. They couldn't even communicate with language, but they would tell a story. They would tell a story by acting it out, where they bang on rocks or run around. It's almost like charades, but they were telling a story, and people were fascinated, right? Everyone in the little clan of the cave bear, right? They were just all hanging out in the cave.
Clan of the cave bear.
And there was usually one really good storyteller. There's always that one or two people, like everyone who's listening to this right now, they know those one or two people. They're like, oh my God, they're the best storytellers in the world. And a lot of times say Irish people are really good storytellers. Just this cultural thing, whatever, Italians, whatever it is, because we talk with our hands. But you know, the key, the fact that remains is that as goods, yes, we are wired to need storytelling in our lives, and that starts as a child, right? When we want to hear bedtime stories, and we need that for some reason. It's a human, maybe because you know, we're all on a journey. And you had mentioned the archetypes and the Hollywood archetypes of the hero's journey. One of the things I learned in researching and taking classes with the documentary and film stuff is that the most fascinating documentaries as well, just the same with films, but if you're doing a real story, if you have a story about, you have a protagonist, you have a person or people,
yeah,
and that person or people are going through a journey, right?
Yes.
So they're going on a journey, and along that journey, there is opposition. There is something they need to overcome. And in the case of this documentaries, just for example, Stan Romanik's story, here's a guy who's just obviously has gone through this journey and went through hell on wheels during it, right? During the course of all of his experiences, and how he's kind of trying to come out the other side. Same goes for the second one.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So it's the idea of watching another human being go on this journey of discovery, or trying to get past something, or trying to, exercise demons, not literally, but, just get through something and get out the other side and see what happens. That's something that we are all totally, totally drawn to.
Oh, that's so well said. And supposedly now they say that when you are storytelling around a campfire, as kids, ghost stories, scary stories, goosebumps, they say that these little fairy-like people will come around and watch. Now, I don't see them, but people keep telling me they're around. So they, well, maybe there's a really good story that I have to tell. So that just makes it a little more exciting. And the next best thing about this was in this No Solar book, the movie Astral City. They showed this guy in the afterlife in this city of tower. They have these towers everywhere, and one of the towers was called the communications tower. So supposedly there's a huge long line of spirits who want to communicate through mediums here on Earth, but they're in line and it's really orderly and so on. And I think that could help with people who might feel stuck. Is you can always turn to the spirit world for help. Now in school we turn to Spark Notes. Did you know about that?
Oh yeah, yeah. We had Cliff Notes in my day.
Cliff Notes.
Yeah.
Oh no, so bad.
But that's awful because we missed out on the real essence of reading, right? You know, like it's just that was because we were lazy kids, lazy teenagers. But I just didn't like to read until I was in my 20s. So I was never, when I was a kid, I didn't love reading.
What books made you want to read?
Well, I remember in school we had to read like I remember reading the Iliad, which is the whole story of Troy and Achilles and Greek mythology. It was amazing. And same with the Ulysses, the Odyssey. That really was exciting for me. And I remembered some books like that really made me. But, you know, it was really weird. You mentioned, I want to go back to this because you mentioned the whole idea that people in folklore in certain cultures, they do think that if you could tell a good story around a campfire, you're out in the woods or the wilderness, that the energies out there or whoever's out there, whether they be fairies or whatever, are drawn to the story too, because they love stories. So they want to hear the story. But what's interesting is this folklore is story. Folklores are stories that people tell. And whether they're true or not, we don't know for sure. I'm not going to say that there are or are not fairies because I'll leave that to other people to determine. but the idea that fairies are listening to us tell stories is a story. That is a story, right? The story, imagine it, because you're in your imagination, you're thinking you're around a campfire and all these little fairies are coming around the campfire to listen to your cool story. That's a cool story. It's a cool story within a story. So it's like, and we love this. We love it because we have imaginations. We need this. We need this in our lives. We need this in our conscious.
All right. So we'll see how far we can get with the time, but this is for all the viewers. Comment in the chat, yes or no, do you believe in fairies? Because if you do, we'll play a fun little game.
And let's talk about that, Krista, you and I. Okay, so as we know, like there are a lot. I am very open-minded. You know I am, right?
Oh, that's right. This was your pain point. Oh no.
This is my pain point. No, it's not. It's not a pain point. But here's the thing. So, like, you know, I believe in a lot of things. I believe in ETs. I believe in several ET races. I believe that they are here. I believe that they've interacted with us. I believe in a spirit world. I might even believe, I have to be honest with you. I don't know what fairies are. They might be elementals in one culture. Yeah. They might be, right. You know, like what is a fairy? You know what I mean? We call it a fairy. And then we hear fairy tales, right? Stories, fairy tales. Because the fairies love apparently stories. So, but the thing is that is my pain point because I can't get, I'm like, I would have to see that to believe it, but I don't 100% discount it. But that's one of those things where I think even if someone says, I believe in fairies, well, then I would ask, what's a fairy? What is a fairy?
A fairy is supposedly made up of elemental substance. So we have, it could be any of the four major elements, and they're not always given intelligence, but they have some sort of intelligence. Some people believe they can evolve into humans. For magicians, they supposedly can do their bidding for them. So they, with some, it's like they may aspire to have a human soul. But then there are also evolved beings who are fairy-like and maybe consist of plant matter or have certain types of abilities, or perhaps they exist in a certain realm. I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, but I wrote a book about them. I did some research on the different types. what they represent: the earth ones, the water ones, the air ones, the fire ones. And so, if
So in a sense,
anything,
there's.
yeah,
I'm sorry. No, in a sense, those in one sense, they are elementals because
yeah,
they're
yeah.
elements. There's an element, an earth element associated with them. Someone made a good point here. There says a couple things. Someone said Wendy from Peter Pan. She's a fairy, or I guess she's a fairy. And then someone says fairies can be mean. I've heard that too. I've heard that fairies, not all fairies are good fairies. From that standpoint. But I like the idea of what you're saying is that they're somehow elemental spirits, or someone said they're kind of like angels in different form. So if you see a fairy, like if visually I was in a field in a meadow and I was hanging out, I was meditating one day and I was really in a good place. And all of a sudden I saw this white glowing thing above my head. I might say, oh my God, it's a fairy, or depending on how I interpreted it, oh my God, it's an angel. Oh my God, it's a fairy. Oh my God, it's a elemental. So sometimes I think words, the terms we use for things, it kind of muddles it sometimes, because whatever it is it's an energetic thing, right? It's an energetic being.
Yeah, to the Vikings, there are 9 realms, as we saw in that movie Thor. They're in Asgard, which is the realm of the gods. But then there is Nilfheim, which is where the elves live. Then there's one where the giants live. And so they have their own. In Paramahansa Yogananda's book, Autobiography of a Yogi, on page 86, he said that there used to be lots of fairies on this planet, but people stopped worshiping them. And some say they are nature's angels, so they look after animals, they help plants grow, that sort of thing. And they're sort of in between system that helps maintain all of nature, which is neutral. So it's like if you want to charge something with negative or positive energy, that's neutral. It's kind of a source of energy. And
Would you agree that, I mean, would you agree that fairies, the idea that we used to be more connected to not only Earth, Gaia, but also to spirit, and we in history, in the past, we were much more connected to these things, and that over time, as technology took over, we became much more disconnected, which is why people don't believe in that anymore, or don't see them as much. Is that I mean, because that's what I feel like you're saying, like people just stopped opening up to that, right? Opening up to the
right, yeah.
possibilities and opening their minds to letting it in. And there's a lot of people that say we've lost our true spirituality. Forget about organized religion. That's not the same thing. I'm talking about true spirituality. And when you lose that, what do we lose? What do we lose touch with? Do we lose touch with things like fairies and angels and these things that used to be here and are maybe still on Earth, but we just don't see them anymore because we're blocked off?
And what about everyone talking about third eye? I want to open my third eye. So it's like,
right?
What if?
Because you told me that I remember you telling me that the third eye has been closed off in a lot of people, but back when it was wide open, like ancient Egyptians and all that, it was wide. The third eye was working extremely well, but now it's almost become dormant in us.
Yeah, when you look up yogic cities, they talk about 8 or 9 basic superpowers, but there are like 64 of those that you can supposedly develop in the ascension or the evolution of us becoming no longer Homo sapien, but Homo novus and then Homo noeticus. So when the star children are having these abilities, it's actually a natural progression. And people like Stan Romanek have had such uncomfortable experiences because it's like you're this magical person having these things in a world that isn't accepting of your experience. And this was why I recommend you guys here to check out the latest upload of Orion Council channeled message, because they talked about how people experience another dimension, and they want to bring it into this one, and others haven't had that shared experience. So, for example, there's this story Doreen Virtue wrote in her book called Assertiveness for Earth Angels. She started off the book talking about a dinner party where Esther Hicks was the channel for Abraham. And somebody started arguing with Doreen, like, oh, it's just all unicorns and rainbows with you. And Esther stood up for Doreen and said, maybe you haven't had that experience of unicorns and rainbows. It's like they couldn't possibly grasp that. And which is why I think the Ryan Council is saying, for example, is you have to tell your story. You have to tell either why you going to do that, or why is this such a good story? Like, when you're telling the other kids, like, yeah, you guys, you wouldn't believe, you have to know this thing. And and the kid who's lying all the time, people stop believing that kid because it's fake, right? And so maybe that you should write fantasy books, but maybe this person should write documentaries because that's actually really happening. And so,
but what's great about all this is like the idea that, if fairies are a part of human lore, right? Folklore, human lore, whatever you want to call it. So it's part of our, I don't want to say imagination, because that implies that they're not real. And that's it, whatever they may or may not be, we may never know, at least not while we're here on this planet in 3D form. We may not. So, but the idea that here we are talking about fairies and what they might be, and these elemental creatures, that's all part of, like, when you talk about telling stories, right? Like, it's like we're meant to tell stories. So all of a sudden people who are creative are listening to this and like, well, I'm going to write a book about these people who see these things in the woods and they think they're fairies, but they're really not fairies, or they think they're something else, but they're angels, or they can all of a sudden come up with this really great idea for a book or a screenplay, and there might even be a documentary. The problem is it's so difficult to get evidence. And with the documentary, you want to have something tangible that you can show people and say, hey, there's, I mean, I guess depending on the way you approach it, but no, but I love the idea that, people are commenting on that. Well, there's no physical proof. It doesn't matter if there's no physical proof. And that's true, because for personally, it doesn't matter if there's physical proof. You believe what people want to believe. But to the scientific community, and if you're trying to reach a wide audience, you kind of have to try to include some tangible, unless you're talking about folklore, the power of myth, or the power of, storytelling or archetype or whatever. But it's all fun, right? It's all cool to talk about.
And this is one reason I research things like the spirit world. I have a video coming up on the afterlife, about letters from the afterlife, where this ghost guy is talking through a medium, because it was super, super popular in the late 1800s. People would clear their minds and do automatic writing. And that means you have to become very passive in your mind. So the skill with this whole channeling thing, for instance, is like you have to be able to shift, in and out of consciousness, which takes a lot of mastery, and that requires things like meditation. And so when you're channeling these kinds of stories from the other side, it's like this whole other world opens up to you, and you start to see things really, really differently. That's why they call it second sight. And a friend of mine he works for a brain training institute. You guys see it all over Mind Valley and Gaia, the ads on my videos, is when you're able to shift in your frequency and sync up different parts of your brain, you might start seeing stuff in the room. And that's partially why, I'm on here. So like skeptics think, they're just doing this for some attention. Not really. People get totally ridiculed for these kind of thing, but they're in part, the good people are telling you these things because if it happened to them, it can happen to you too. And we don't want you to get freaked out. Like people's lives get, kind of convoluted And some people lose their mind when this stuff comes in. Like they start channeling codes and stuff, and they flip out and they get institutionalized because they're totally ungrounded.
Right.
And so this
They don't
is
know
like,
they don't know where to
yeah.
put it, right? They don't know where to put it in their lives.
Right. They don't know. I mean, I don't really know what their deal is, because I grew up in a super intellectual family. So I don't really know what the cause of tons of psychoses are, and how, the brain, it's so intricate. But partially why I'm on here is to let people know, like, look, if you have 10 psychics go, dude, there's these little guys with hats following you, and they're like 2 inches tall. What are you going to do with that? Like,
Right.
what do you do with that sort of knowledge? And I find that it makes life a lot more magical, these sorts of things. But you're obviously the one who gives it meaning. And
Right. Well, if you can find a place for that in your life and be able to hold it and say, there's a magical part of the world that I may never understand, but it's okay. It's okay. Mm-hmm. Right. It's okay for that to happen in the world. A lot of strange things. You're downloaded, right? Where I was going to talk about being downloaded, because there have been people, we've talked to people, whether they're screenwriters or book writers, and this has happened to me. It's happened to my partner in J3 Films, John Sumple. It's happened to Miguel, who we had on the show. You are downloaded. Somehow you feel, it could be overnight, while you're sleeping, while you're driving, all of a sudden something hits you. Something is downloaded into you by something else, by another power, by another energy. And you're downloaded with information, and you're like, oh my God, that is so cool. And you think, I got the best story. I got the best idea for a book, or I got the best idea for a screenplay. In your case, you're literally being downloaded with information. Right?
Your DNA is getting information. You could be getting impressions from the spirit world. You could be evolving yourself. Your subconscious mind might be open due to your meditation. There's tons of reasons for why but that happens to a lot of people. And then they feel compelled to share. Yeah.
Yeah, you do feel compelled. Right? It's like something's urging you, something's pushing you. I have to tell this story. And that's honestly kind of the path I've been on for the last 7-8 years, maybe last decade of my life, is that I have to do this. And you're the same way. We're talking about the same thing, because, when you were originally downloaded for the first time, it must have freaked you out a little bit, right? But, to say the least. But over time, you learned how to not only cope with it, but you realize that's like, I'm being downloaded for a reason. Sometimes I'm getting information downloaded into my DNA somehow, right?
Yeah.
By whomever.
Mm-hmm.
Correct.
And some people call this light language, where they feel compelled to write symbols. The latest information on that is, for psychics, is they're tuning into the crown chakra, and they're mapping out these templates they're getting. And the Rhine Council said, do not be preoccupied with the templates. So this is one reason people flip out, like in X-Files. Remember, there's this little boy, and he starts drawing the binary code or whatever. He's channeling a satellite, and then people are like losing it. Well, exactly. Is you have to learn to step in and you step out. Is everything in moderation.
Right. Right, exactly. That's so funny. I love when you your references to TV shows and old. I love it. It's awesome. It's very good and great. You're best with Aunt May. So far, Aunt May is the one that just freaking killed me.
Like, what are these movies these millennials are watching?
Yeah, no, that's good stuff.
Quick, before we end, what's your favorite story?
Oh God, my favorite story.
Everyone comment in the chat, what's your favorite story of all time?
Love found, love lost, love regained. Boy meets girl, boy loses girl, boy gets girl in the end.
I would say for me, as a quest. Okay, that's really... I'll just say Harry Potter. Watched it a million times, read all the books.
Lord of the Rings or something. Like Lord of the Rings, right? They're on a quest.
Oh my gosh, Lord of the Rings.
Those are the best.
Well, it's been great, guys. Thank you for tuning in today, and hope you guys get out whatever story you need to get out. And you've been officially downloaded with our 2020 intelligence. We'll see you in the next episode. Click like, comment, stay subscribed, and don't forget to check out J3 Films Extraordinary. The Seating, Stan Romanek is part 1, Experiencers part 2. More to come next time. Peace.